My father pointed at the door in front of 15 relatives and told me to go live in the streets. Called me a useless failure. Said it loud enough that my aunt dropped her fork. My mother sat there, silent. Amber, my younger sister, actually smiled into her napkin. And I just stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out. They thought they'd destroyed me. They had no idea I was worth $25 million. 3 weeks later, I owned their house. Let me back up. My name is Morgan Donovan. From the outside, we looked perfect. Holiday cards, matching sweaters, the whole thing. My parents were masters at looking good. But behind closed doors? Different story. Amber was the golden child. Always had been. She got violin lessons, private tutors, summer programs in Europe. I got chores and lectures about being grateful. Amber was setting such a good example. I remember being 12, showing my dad a website I'd built from scratch. Took me 3 weeks. I was so proud. He glanced at it for maybe 5 seconds and said, "That's nice, but Amber just won first place in the regional violin competition." Then he walked away. That became the pattern. Every achievement I had was followed by "but Amber." Every time I tried to share something I'd accomplished, the conversation shifted to her. I didn't fit their mold. While Amber posed for family photos, I stayed up late teaching myself how to build websites and automate systems. At 16, when other girls posted prom pictures, I posted my first online project. My family called it a quirky phase. When I dropped out of college to build my first real company, they said I embarrassed them. My mother actually cried, not because she was worried about me, but because she didn't know how to explain it to her friends at the country club. They never asked what I was building. They only asked what people would think. By the time I turned 32, Amber had become everything they wanted: polished, charming, loud enough to fill any room. I'd become everything they dismissed: quiet, independent, unwilling to shrink myself to fit their expectations. According to them, I wasn't building companies. I was messing around online. I wasn't successful. I was struggling. That Thanksgiving wasn't new. The humiliation, the whispers, seating me at the end of the table like I barely existed, it had been happening my whole life. But that night, something inside me cracked open. Not because they insulted me. I'd survived worse. But because of how easily they believed their own version of me over the truth. 20 people in that room. Not one of them questioned it. Not one of them asked if maybe, just maybe, my parents had it wrong. Back in Seattle, my penthouse felt like another planet. Floor-to-ceiling windows, city lights stretching forever, everything I'd built with my own hands. But their voices still echoed in my head, scraping at wounds I thought I'd sealed shut. I kept asking myself the same question: how can people who know nothing about your life feel so confident defining it? I didn't know it yet, but their cruelty at that table was only the beginning. The real unraveling started the moment I stopped trying to earn a place in a family that never wanted me whole. The days after Thanksgiving felt hollow. I went through meetings, strategy calls, product reviews, everything I normally handled with sharp focus. But my mind kept drifting back to that table in Portland. The way my dad's voice echoed. The way my mother didn't even flinch. The way Amber watched me like she'd been waiting her whole life to see this moment. But humiliation doesn't end when it's delivered. It has an aftershock. Mine arrived 3 days later. I was in my kitchen, waiting for water to boil, when my phone buzzed. Message from Rachel, my cousin, the only person in that family who ever treated me like I mattered. "Morgan, I need to tell you something. Your mom's been talking." My stomach tightened. Talking how? Long pause. Then, she told everyone at church you're basically homeless in Seattle. Said your internet hobbies finally fell apart and you're staying on couches. I set the phone down. The room spun for a second. Homeless. Couch surfing. Failed at life. They didn't just throw me out. They rewrote the story. And they did it with the same confidence they used when calling Amber a genius for breathing. I texted back, "I have a 3-bedroom penthouse." Rachel replied immediately, "I know. They don't want to know." That line cut deeper than the lie itself. They didn't want to know, because knowing would force them to face the truth that everything they'd mocked and dismissed had turned into success they couldn't control. Then Rachel sent another message. Your mom also said you called her begging for money last week. Said you were crying on the phone. I hadn't called her in 6 months. The lies were getting bigger, more elaborate. They weren't just rewriting my present, they were rewriting my entire existence to fit the narrative they needed. 2 days later, the aftershock turned into an earthquake. An email landed in my inbox from a law office in Portland. Subject line, confirmation required for your guarantor status. Guarantor for what? I opened it. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. It referenced a renovation loan, around $400,000, taken out 2 years earlier. And according to the attached records, I was listed as the guarantor. I never signed anything for them. I wouldn't have. But the file included a scan of my signature. One glance and every nerve in my body went cold. They forged my name on a massive loan. Money that was partially funneled into Amber's boutique, the one she bragged about like it was her destiny come true. The humiliation at Thanksgiving suddenly made cruel sense. They needed me small, powerless, easier to use, easier to frame as unstable if the loan ever collapsed. I stood there in the quiet of my kitchen, city lights flickering against the glass, and let the truth settle like ice in my veins. They hadn't just thrown me out. They'd stolen from me. And the worst part? They genuinely believed they had the right. That night, something inside me stopped breaking and started sharpening. The first thing I felt wasn't anger. It was clarity. Cold, steady, almost frightening in how calm it settled into my chest. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to understand them. I wasn't trying to excuse them. I wasn't even trying to win them over. I was simply done. But being done didn't mean walking away. Being done meant drawing a line they could never step over again. I spent the next morning combing through every document the law firm had referenced. Payments, bills, records tied to the renovation and Amber's boutique. Every trail led back to the same truth. Huge sums had been moved without transparency, and the loan secured with my forged signature was sliding toward default. If it defaulted, the lender could seize assets, force a sell-off, push for recovery. And if my name stayed on that paperwork, I'd be dragged down with them. I forwarded everything to my attorney in Seattle. He called within minutes. Morgan, this isn't sloppy. This is deliberate. I know. Are you sure you're ready to pursue this? Once we open the door, it won't close quietly. That's the point. We began the process immediately, verifying handwriting inconsistencies, tracking the money flow, documenting every piece of financial misrepresentation. And the deeper we looked, the clearer one pattern became. My family had built their recent life upgrades on borrowed money. Not earned. Not saved. Borrowed, with my name as their safety net. That realization didn't hurt. What hurt was how naturally they must have believed I'd never fight back. 3 days into the review, my attorney called again. If the loan continues sliding, the lender may consider transferring control if a qualified buyer steps in to absorb the debt. And I'm qualified. You're more than qualified. If you want the option to take over, I can initiate the process. I stared out at the Seattle skyline, clouds rolling low over the water. Do it. That decision lit a fuse. Over the next 2 weeks, my team and I moved quietly. We positioned ourselves to legally acquire the loan if it defaulted, giving me leverage over the property and the financial choices tied to it. Nothing about it was vindictive. It was protection, my life, my reputation, my work. If they pulled me into a mess they created, I'd make sure I had control of how it unraveled. And still, throughout the entire process, not a single person from my family called. Not to apologize. Not to explain. Not even to lie. It was almost poetic how silent they were while I built the very outcome that would change everything for them. By the time the 3rd week hit, my attorney confirmed it. The loan is entering default. You're first in line. I closed my laptop slowly, feeling that same cold clarity from the night they threw me out. 3 weeks ago, They told me to go live in the streets. Now I was about to own the ground they stood on. 3 weeks later, my attorney's number flashed across my screen just as I stepped out of a late meeting. His voice carried the kind of finality that settles everything you already know. It's official. Default triggered. You now control the debt and effectively everything tied to it. Everything. The house in Portland. The boutique Amber bragged about like it was a crown. The leverage my family never imagined I'd hold. I didn't feel triumph. I felt steady. Like standing on solid ground for the first time. Move forward, I told him. He didn't ask if I was sure. Not anymore. We spent 4 days preparing. Drafting notices. Outlining repayment terms. Structuring the offer that would give my family 2 options. 1. Sell and walk away clean. 2. Enter a strict rental agreement under my ownership. No cruelty. No theatrics. Just consequences, fair, legal, human. What I didn't expect was the phone call from Portland. Not from my parents. From Jordan, Amber's fiancé. Morgan, he said, voice low and urgent. You need to know Amber's panicking. Your parents think the lender is coming after them. They don't know it's you. A pause. I don't think they'll handle it well. I almost laughed. Handle it well. They had forged my signature, humiliated me, slandered me, then expected the universe to protect them from the fallout they created. But I didn't want their panic. I wanted their understanding. Not of my success, but of the boundaries they'd broken. So I told Jordan, meet me at Westmont House. Friday dinner. Bring them. He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. They think the lender wants to negotiate. Good. Let them walk in believing that. Friday came cold and quiet, Seattle draped in mist that clung to the windows of the restaurant's private room. I arrived early, my attorney beside me. The table was set with candlelight and understated elegance. Nothing flashy. Nothing vengeful. Just a stage for truth. When the door opened, the first person I saw was my mother. Perfect hair, flawless makeup, expression tight with the strain of pretending everything was fine. My father walked behind her, jaw locked. Amber trailed last, eyes red-rimmed but defiant. They didn't greet me. I didn't expect them to. Morgan, my mother said carefully, taking her seat. We appreciate you helping arrange this meeting with the lender. We're confident this is all a misunderstanding. My attorney exchanged a glance with me. Mrs. Donovan, he said, settling his documents on the table. There is no misunderstanding. And I'm not the lender's attorney. My father frowned. Then why are you here? Because, my attorney answered, sliding the first folder forward, Ms. Donovan is the acquiring party. She now controls the debt. Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Amber's breath hitched first. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's face drained of color. I didn't savor it. I simply watched the truth land. My father recovered enough to point at the papers accusingly. You bought our loan. Why would you do that? Because, I said softly, you put my name on it. My mother shook her head rapidly. We thought you'd understand. Amber needed help. Your father meant well. Forging my signature isn't meaning well. Calling me a failure at Thanksgiving isn't help. Telling people I'm homeless isn't concern. Amber finally snapped. Why couldn't you just let it go? You have money. You don't need this. I looked at her the way I might look at a stranger who wandered into the wrong story. You're right. I don't need this. What I need is my name not tied to a sinking loan you all pretended didn't exist. My attorney slid the next document across the table. These are the terms. You can sell the property and fully resolve the debt. Or if you choose not to sell, Miss Donovan will assume ownership, and you may remain as tenants under a structured rental contract. We have to rent our own home, my father whispered. It isn't your home, I corrected. Not anymore. Amber glared at me with a mix of disbelief and fury. You're ruining everything. No, I said. I'm ending what you started. My mother burst into quiet, broken sobs. Not guilt. Just fear of losing the life she curated for others to admire. We're your family, she choked. How can you do this to us? I leaned forward, voice steady. You taught me exactly how. The night you threw me out, you said I should go live in the streets. You said I was useless. You said I had nothing. But the truth is, you never knew me at all. I let that sit before continuing. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to separate myself from choices that were never mine. My father exhaled shakily, anger melting into something raw. What do you want from us? Nothing, I said. Not an apology. Not a confession. Just accountability. My attorney added, you have 7 days to decide. The silence that followed felt endless. My mother stared at the papers like they were written in a language she couldn't understand. Amber's hands were shaking. My father looked 10 years older than he had when he walked in. Finally, Amber spoke again, her voice breaking. This was supposed to be my fresh start. The boutique was everything. It was built on fraud, I said quietly. That's not a fresh start. That's a house of cards. We were going to pay you back, my mother tried. Without asking. Without telling me. You were going to pay back money you stole using my identity. I shook my head. That's not how any of this works. My father stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. I won't sit here and be lectured by. By who? I interrupted. By the daughter you threw out? By the failure you announced to 15 people? By the woman you told to live in the streets? He stood there, mouth opening and closing, unable to find words. Sit down, Dad. You're going to want to hear the rest. He sat. My attorney continued, walking them through every detail, every timeline, every consequence. With each page turned, I watched my family's carefully constructed world collapse piece by piece. The meeting ended with no hugs. No shouting. Just stunned silence. They left the room looking smaller than I had ever seen them. Amber paused at the doorway, eyes glossy. You could have helped me. I did, I said. Just not the way you wanted. When the door closed behind them, I let out a breath I'd held for years. Not from anger, from release. Outside, the mist had turned into soft rain, tapping lightly against the pavement. I walked through it without rushing, feeling the weight of my family's expectations finally slip off my shoulders. 3 weeks earlier, they told me to go live in the streets. Tonight, they walked out of a building they no longer owned. And for the first time in my life, the distance between us felt like freedom. Over the next week, the silence from Portland was louder than any outburst could have been. No calls. No explanations. No sudden change of heart. My attorney forwarded updates as they came in, short, clinical messages noting their hesitation, their consultations, their growing realization that there was no loophole big enough to crawl through. I imagined them sitting in that house, looking at furniture they might have to leave behind, walking through rooms that suddenly felt temporary. I imagined Amber standing in her boutique, finally understanding that success you don't earn doesn't last. On the 7th day, just before the deadline, the decision arrived. They chose to sell. It was the smartest option. The cleanest exit. The sale cleared the debt in full, released my name from every tie, and left them with enough to downsize into a smaller place across town. No one was ruined. No one was left desperate. They simply had to live within the boundaries they'd ignored for years. Amber's boutique didn't survive the transition. Without the steady stream of borrowed money, it folded within a month. She posted a vague message online about new beginnings, never mentioning the truth. My parents retreated from the social circles they once dominated. Their curated image quietly replaced by something humbler. The irony wasn't lost on me. They spent my entire life telling me I wasn't enough. Now they were learning what not enough actually felt like. And me? I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, whole. I went back to my work, my life in Seattle, the one I built without their validation. For the first time, my success wasn't something I carried in silence. It was simply my reality, unbothered by whether they acknowledged it. Sometimes protecting yourself isn't loud. Sometimes it's choosing peace so decisively that nothing chaotic can follow you home again. I haven't spoken to them since that dinner. And maybe that's the clearest sign of healing, silence that doesn't ache anymore. I built a life that isn't shaped by their expectations, their judgments, or their rewritten stories. A life where my worth isn't up for debate. 6 months later, Rachel called me. She'd just had a baby, wanted me to meet her daughter. We met at a coffee shop halfway between Seattle and Portland. She didn't ask about the family. Neither did I. We just talked about her daughter, about my work, about normal things that had nothing to do with the Donovans and their drama. As I was leaving, she hugged me tight and whispered, "I'm proud of you. For all of it." That meant more than any apology from my parents ever could. If any part of this felt familiar, you're not alone. And if you've ever had to walk away to save yourself, I hope my story reminds you it's allowed. Thanks for listening, and if you like this story, share it with others, and don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about family boundaries, second chances, and finding your worth when the people who should have seen it never did. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to accept less than you deserve.